They say the most dangerous egos are not the loud ones, not the ones that boast, shout, or demand attention. The truly powerful egos are the quiet ones, those that do not need to raise their voice because they operate with the silent certainty that they are right. And among all zodiac signs, Virgo holds the most discreet, subtle, and difficult to detect ego of all. It hides behind acts of kindness, behind thoughtful advice, behind calm expressions and carefully measured silences. It doesn't dominate. It doesn't impose. It simply guides, softly, logically, and almost invisibly, until you realize you've already followed their direction without even noticing. Virgo's ego whispers, not shouts. It doesn't command, it corrects. It doesn't seek power, it seeks precision. And perhaps what is most unsettling is this. Many times, Virgo really does know what's best for you. But what happens when that certainty becomes a shadow? When the desire to help turns into fear, control, or unspoken judgment? This is where the fascinating, contradictory nature of Virgo emerges. The silent ego that believes it must protect the world by perfecting it. The ego born from perfection. Virgo lives with an invisible microscope inside their mind. While others see surface-level reality, Virgo sees layers, structures, weak points, possible routes, hidden failures, future consequences. Their brain doesn't move in straight lines. It branches like a labyrinth, exploring every possible angle before deciding anything. This intense level of detail creates an internal confidence that doesn't appear from vanity, but from effort. Their ego isn't inflated, it's constructed, built over years of analyzing, correcting, improving, adjusting, refining. Virgo doesn't flaunt intelligence, they simply operate from it as if it were natural air. They don't seek praise for their perfectionism, they need it because it keeps their world predictable, manageable, safe. Every time their method works, every time a prediction comes true, every time a quiet "I told you so" appears in reality, their ego receives another silent confirmation. Their ego grows not through pride, but through evidence. To Virgo, if they have thought through a situation 1,000 times, if they have seen every possible outcome, then why wouldn't their plan be the correct one? It feels irresponsible to them to stay silent when they know a better, safer, more efficient path. And so, without meaning to, their pursuit of precision becomes the origin of an ego that doesn't wish to dominate, but ends up influencing everything around them. A need to help that sometimes disguises itself as control. Virgo has an inner compass that always points towards service. They cannot simply watch someone make a mistake they believe is avoidable. They feel a visceral need to intervene, not from arrogance, but from responsibility. Helping, for Virgo, is not optional. It is instinct, it is duty, it is love. Their advice comes wrapped in logic, clarity, and careful observation. But that same helpful nature can cross a line without Virgo noticing. Their silent ego convinces them that their view is the most reasonable, the most cautious, the most efficient. So when someone ignores their warnings, Virgo feels a sting, not of anger, but of confusion. Why would anyone choose a worse option when a better one was already presented? This is how their help begins to feel like pressure to others. Not because Virgo wants control, but because Virgo believes danger is coming and they cannot stand idle. The painful part is that when their help is rejected, Virgo often feels useless, like their presence has lost purpose. And so helping becomes an emotional shield, a way to hold on, to matter, to stay connected. This is the birthplace of control disguised as care. When their ego activates, the silent judgment. Virgo's judgment does not explode. It doesn't produce dramatic speeches or angry insults. It appears in the air, in the pause before they speak, in the lingering stare that says more than words. Their silence is sharp, penetrating, heavy with analysis. When Virgo feels ignored or challenged, their ego rises quietly, not to destroy, but to evaluate, and the precision of their evaluation can feel like a blade. Virgo will rarely scold you loudly. They will simply point out the flaw with surgical accuracy. So accurate, in fact, that it hits harder than a shout could. Their judgment is not malicious. It comes from frustration, from the belief that suffering could have been avoided if their logic had been followed. When Virgo's ego is active, what they want most is not to prove they were right, but to confirm that their thinking system is reliable. They seek internal validation, not external victory. Still, their silent judgment can wound deeply. No one judges with more precision than a Virgo who stayed silent too long. The wise ego, the part the world truly needs. Despite its shadows, Virgo's ego carries a powerful light. Their mind sees patterns others miss. They understand complexity instinctively. They can predict problems long before they appear. Virgo is the lighthouse when life becomes foggy. They don't brag about knowing what to do. They simply know. Their ego is backed by reality, not delusion. Unlike impulsive signs, Virgo filters every decision through layers of thought. They don't speak until they're certain. They don't advise until they've visualized multiple outcomes. They avoid giving opinions unless they're grounded in facts, logic, and lived experience. Their accurate predictions strengthen their confidence. Their successful strategies reinforce their belief in themselves. And because they accumulate real knowledge over time, their ego becomes a source of stability for others. But even this wise ego has a shadow. When Virgo is right too often, and they usually are, they begin to assume the optimal way should be universal. Not stated aloud, but felt internally. Why would anyone choose a worse path if a better one exists? This logic creates distance, rigidity, and sometimes a quiet intolerance for chaos or spontaneity. Virgo must remember that not all lessons come from efficiency. Sometimes the messy path is the one a person truly needs. What Virgo doesn't say, the fear behind their ego. Beneath Virgo's silent ego lies a deep, unspoken fear, the fear that emotional or practical chaos will harm the people they love. Virgo fears that a small mistake can become a disaster, that one irrational decision can ruin something precious, that something preventable may happen simply because no one stopped it. So they intervene, they correct, they guide, they warn. To others, it looks like control. To Virgo, it is protection. There is also a more intimate fear, the fear of not being enough. Virgo believes their worth comes from what they contribute, from how much they improve, from the solutions they provide. So when their advice is ignored, they feel their value shrinking. When their help is rejected, they feel unnecessary. Their ego becomes a shield, protecting their sense of purpose. And then there's the quietest fear of all, the fear of chaos. Unpredictability terrifies them. Spontaneity destabilizes them. When people act without thinking, Virgo feels the ground shake beneath their feet. Their ego reacts by trying to restore order, to create a mental refuge in a world that feels threatening to their analytical soul. Behind Virgo's ego, there is not domination, but fear, tenderness, and a desire for safety. Their silent ego is not a villain. It is a mixture of logic, love, caution, and sensitivity. Virgo doesn't want to control you. They want to protect you. They want to give you the safest path. They want things to work, not for their pride, but for your well-being. Even when their rationality becomes pressure, even when their help becomes overwhelming, their intention is rarely selfish. Behind every correction, every warning, every analytical gaze, there is a heart that wants you to hurt less, even more than you want it yourself. But Virgo must also learn this. Not everything can be prevented. Not every person needs repair. Mistakes are not always disasters. Sometimes they are teachers. When Virgo balances their desire to guide with the wisdom of letting go, their light becomes softer, warmer, more human. Because in the end, the silent ego of Virgo does not seek to be right. It seeks a world that suffers less.